right, click the link to my channel here over at SubScribestar. So Charlie Kirk assassinated by a madman. Turns out the globalists will kill you for free speech. And ultimately, you can say that the media was responsible because what they have done, what is called stochastic terrorism, to focus hatred on one group of people. The other thing I was wondering about is Charlie Kirk important enough to be hit by like a hostile state or a big group, or was it just an individual who was crazy, who has been, proselytized by the media? And the other thing to think of is like he has a big following. He's 31 years old, very moderate. So politics could have been, in the future was probably in the future cards for him. 30 years in the future, who knows what he would have run for. So, a lot of these people are thinking long terms. So this is just one example. And the whole thing is like, honestly, it's just kind of sickening to see these kind of, you got to bring back institutions. There's the thing that social media did was it allowed deeply disturbed people to get online and spread their poison everywhere. They have a right to do it, but it's kind of showing us who they are. So the left celebrates the violent criminal George Floyd as their idol. I mean, literally, they had, artworks dedicated to him. And he was a lifelong criminal. And they justify murder of people discussing political topics. 31 years old with a wife and 2 kids. The thing is, if we have the open marketplace of ideas, that is not an easy picture. We win because the left has bad ideas that can't be defended. And keep in mind, the actual right isn't allowed to speak on these big platforms. The turning point politics, I disagree. He seemed like a nice person, but the politics, those kind of politics are just pointless. And maybe hopefully people kind of are coming to that conclusion that this type of milquetoast, big tent, globalist light, it's like, well, it got you to where you are here, where they believe in the big tent fiction of fungibility in kind of the same way that the left does. The left wants people to come illegally, but the moderate right wants people to come legally. And I look at that and go, that has the same end result in changing the demographics, replacing one group of people for another, and also it changes the politics forever to the left wing. It doesn't matter if they're legal or illegal. You're just replacing the golden goose who created the country with people who didn't create the country. So that's kind of the right wing normie cope, who's the group who's they've been brainwashed to be terrified of being called far right or being called Istophobic, and they're just gonna have to get over that and kind of just be honest about these kind of things. So what happens is they find out the harsh rule of game theory when they learn that other races advocate for their race to import more Indians with Viva Swami or Mexicans and not train Americans. And they go, this is great for America. And you look around, or the Hyundai plant, it's like it's full of South Koreans. And they go, look, we brought American jobs. You go, those are South Koreans. Those are not Americans. This is gaslighting on this level is just headed for a collapse. Ultimately, your race is your tribe. If other groups advocate for their people, but your group doesn't, then they will simply replace you. But to Charlie Kirk's credit, he finally started to move to more of an America first position. But he was still Israel first, which I assume is a religious thing for him. It seemed he was very serious about that. Kirk was influential, a moderate, and to people on the farther right, he was kind of a gatekeeper. Like a lot of these, Gateway Pundit, Postmillennial, InfoWars, Daily Wire, PragerU type of media sites. So when they murder the moderate or assassinate the moderates, who replaces? And Trump is a moderate as well. So who replaces the moderates? Well, hopefully the real right steps into position, because it's pointless to keep pushing moderate positions with mentally ill savages. But some of the left, this whoever artist over here, call him like Nazis or alt-right grifters, which is a term from like 2015. I forget the guy who created it, but they're the left wing are the ones who are assassinating people. There's a dangerous percentage of people on the left that are mentally unstable. They're victims of Weimar, and in their minds, the Kirk branch of the right wing, they're alt-right, which doesn't make sense because words have meanings, except not to the left, and honestly not to the right sometimes, because they both kind of bend over backwards calling each other Nazi, and you're like, neither one of you, none of this, that word has a meaning. It doesn't, they keep calling each other fascist, and you ask them to define it. The thing is, the alt-right would be like ethno-nationalists. The Kirk branch of the right is not that, and they're not actually conservative because they would be Kirk, Trump, Alex Jones 20 years ago would just be Democrats. They don't actually conserve anything. They're usually Israel first for some reason. If free speech is met with violence, then those are the new rules of the game. The weird thing is them attacking the moderates, and like on the one hand, is it an organized group or is it just some nut job and then there's kind of no motive other than the stochastic angle? Probably because the actual right wing doesn't give these kind of big speeches on college campuses. They do more kind of flash things because it's too dangerous. The left wing wants to go out and punch Nazis, except not really because like actual Nazis are armed. So they don't actually want to fight them. They want to attack moderate, normal, naive, unarmed people, the kind of people who have the audacity to think that the state shouldn't raise their kids. So the left has this mindset that is really interesting. I mean, it's scary, and the whole thing is really kind of depressing, honestly, is they have this appeal to authority where it's an appeal to the structure of some system that that they think the idiot teachers and government schools are better able to raise kids and corrupt school boards from Weingarten or Maxwell and Kushner printing the government contracted school books. The left often don't have kids, but they want to raise yours. It's this mindset that is the issue. And there's literally someone in the news on a school board who was pushing some kind of degenerate stuff, and people realize he sat on the school board, but he didn't have kids, not in the district, but at all. And I was like, why would you want to be in here? And they realize like he's a bad actor, and there's obviously more to that. So for example, the Department of Education has steadily failed since it started. So the left-wing solution is to double down and give it more money because the idea that their government tool doesn't work is just unacceptable to them. The theory has to work because the communist dialectic said it would. The fact that it doesn't work in practice means that they have to try over and it'll work this time. It's central authority on the left versus decentralized structures on the right. Different, multiple massive parallel systems, so it's hard to take down. Though what exactly the final form of the government we want, we're going to have to put some papers together and come to an accord on that. The left says speech is violence. It's not. That's dumb. It's bizarre gaslighting. Speech is kind of the foundation of the West, but it gives them the moral justification for murder. And, a lot of this ties into the rise of trans about 2010, 2015. So there's probably more on that to see who was behind that. Because I remember Miley Cyrus, somewhere back in 2015, started to push pansexuality, which caught my attention. It's like when you decline to use their preferred pronouns and you stick with the biologically correct pronouns, which would just be in accord with reality. This confuses them, and they immediately want state-enforced violence to compel you to speak. That's not the left I remember the old days. And I don't see a way to stop this. Whatever is coming, the demographics has made a country of hostile strangers, so each is going to be fighting for control. The greatest lie I can remember is diversity is your strength. So, that's not the etymology of the word diversity, and like no point in human history, or maybe even the animal kingdom, has that been true. Social cohesion is what holds a nation together. A diverse society is broken, and as diversity increases, social cohesion decreases. This has been well studied, and it's just bizarre that people are scared to be called Istophobic. Well, You just have to get over that. The point of open borders was to destroy the country, and that's exactly what it did. There is no stable country with third world people mixed with first world. It just becomes the third world. Take a look at the Mexican elections and how many assassinations there were when what's her face was elected president. It's like, was she really elected? If the competition, if like a dozen of the people who are trying to win districts get assassinated, it's fair to say your country needs a lot of help. But call Mexico the third world, and then look at Germany, unfortunately, because it wasn't just the AFD that lost like 7 people, and how they were lost. I mean, the statistics on that are just unimaginable. But there was like another 7 people outside the AFD who were running for office who also passed away mysteriously. So that, I mean, like that's when countries get to that banana republic point, it's, I mean, right around the corner is people with AKs in the street. So the thing with them, like that Mexican type of elections, when police have to cover their faces, and Congress people and judges and legislatures, they all have to hide their identity, otherwise they'll be in danger. And then you look at America and it's like, oh, why do we have militarized police? Why do we have our police covering their faces? And the left goes, uncover their faces. And you go, well, as America becomes more diverse, it starts to replicate the countries that these people came from. And I just point to south of the border, and you go, this is exactly what they do there for their own safety, because it's so it's endlessly corrupt, and it's like this so corrupt that it's a Gordian knot of corruption that you're just not going to extricate yourself via voting. It's going to be some, kind of big overturning of the system. And I look at them on Twitter, I go, if they don't cover their faces, they'll get doxxed, and the cartel will come to their house and delete them and their family. And the left wing doesn't have an answer to that. So that's the normal standard of life in most of Latin America. And unfortunately, there's no magic dirt, and I wish there was. I wish a lot of things were different, but it's just is what it is. I wish there was a big tent civic nationalism. I wish this Pollyanna belief of kumbaya, we all got along, and that's just a childish fantasy. It's eventually you come to conclude that you can't eat junk food your whole life, otherwise you're gonna have very serious health issues, or smoking or whatever, and that's reality as well. So what did Charlie Kirk do to deserve this? Well, he spoke to people about politics. And the left wing legitimately believes that they can murder us for words, and that's not all the left wing, but you're going to need some people in the moderate left wing to start asserting themselves and seizing control, and just standing up for themselves with their values and their dogma, and say this is not what the left is. It's like they're bad cops. The left thinks all cops are bad cops. It's like there's another video I'm thinking about doing is American cops. My theory is are bad on purpose. I think there's a method to this madness, and I know American people are ultra violent as well, but there's something wrong with the police force, and it's like it took me a couple of years to notice where these people should be trained better. And a lot of this is also the product of diversity. It's like when you destroy social cohesion, it also destroys it in groups as well, and you have endless conflict. It's like with the NFL and Kaepernick, when some of the teammates started kneeling and the other teammates didn't. It's like, well, that causes a conflict in a team that screws up everything. So we have irreconcilable differences. The crowd that says they're trying to divide us, no, they're unifying everyone mostly against European people, white people. Some of it's against Christianity, but it's mostly racially based. We're divided by nature. Their assumption is that we have to stay together with people who will assassinate public speakers. And he was, to say very moderate, he was the picture of a moderate speaker. That's why it's so heartbreaking to see a 31-year-old guy with a wife and 2 kids. It's just, you think like, well, what do they have planned for us? Well, our footprints are too small to be targets yet, but you get the idea. This is the result of the media, the globalist media, pushing this stochastic terrorism against anyone on the right. And this comic artist on the last image was calling people like Charlie Kirk or Ben Shapiro or Laura Loomer or Alex Jones or Trump, far right Nazis. And you're like, there's a whole spectrum of political beliefs, and I get that these left-wingers are on one end of the spectrum. A lot of them are just openly communist, globalist. But then you go, so you can't possibly seriously have Charlie Kirk and Alex Jones and Trump on as Nazi, because there has to be something beyond that, because, most of us are way further to the right than those people are, and there's a whole, group of people who are farther to the right. So, well, in their ridiculous mind, everyone is just like some kind of... Anyone who's not a Marxist is a wrecker of progress, a wrong thinker, and they go, liberals get the bullet too. And you look at these people and you go, you're like 1% of your community. It's like, unless you're seriously planning on trying to remove 99% of people, liberals get the bullet too. So that means anyone to the right, liberals included, but anyone to the right of liberals also has to be mass genocided. The left is openly telling you who they are. It's left-wing violence the whole time. Left-wing's a real racist? That's kind of a normie joke, because it's more complicated, because it's not racism isn't real. But the way they frame it is, yes, they're the real racists, and they're the real sociopaths, and they're the real violent terrorists. And our government is... Trump was kind of the last hope, the last shot, and he would have needed to use the military to close the borders and deport people as a matter of national security, as a military action. And like the constitutionality of it, the legality of it, you would have just had to let the chips fall. And what the Congress would try to do to stop it, you just have to do that. And you look at Trump and go, yeah, he's just not that guy. There's very few people who are that guy, and some billionaire who's never had to struggle and never been in the military, never been in combat, he's just not that kind of person. It's just not going to happen. To the point where I look at Kamala and a lot of people go, it would have been better if she got elected. It would have been better if you just didn't vote for Trump, because it would have been the one thing to push accelerationism, to finally get the right wing fired up enough. And then there's another video I want to do about Elon Musk buying Twitter. He's good on one hand, and has a whole lot of downside to it as well, because it ended up killing Gab, and Gab would have been where actual militias would have started, because it is an echo chamber. But I guess it's another video. Anyway, so we actually can't separate from these people, because they're pushing political violence against the moderate right, not against the actual far right. It's this rhetoric from the globalist media has brainwashed a lot of mentally ill leftists using stochastic terrorism, as Karl Marx's nephew Bernays talks about in his books on advertising, on how to openly manipulate people, which he was comfortable enough to say in the 20s. It's just repetition of a message. And there's probably like a position of moral authority and structure and whatnot, but simply repetition of a message has a lot to do with it. Keep hitting people with little digestible facts. That's why I make these videos on Odyssey, BitChute, and the various other platforms, including one I can't even name, to try to hit people with little pieces of a different type of opinion that the mainstream media is garbage. So they think Charlie Kirk, Trump, Alex Jones, or what really makes me laugh is Laura Loomer and Ben Shapiro. They think that they with a straight face call Loomer and Shapiro white nationalists. I look at Loomer, I go, she's not European, right? I mean, to her credit, she does have a rockin' body. I saw some drunk guy talking to her in a bar, that some video of some nationalist or something. Anyway, I mean, that's absurd, obviously. But they only have, like they call the Israel-Palestine thing. Their whole life, they've been brainwashed to think that white is bad. So they have to refer to Israelis as white, so they can defame them, because there's political correctness about calling them Israeli. And then you look at like some of the very brown, the Sephardic people, who are clearly not European, but the left wing only has a certain amount of framing. They just don't have free speech to call things accurately. But the issue is, if they will kill Kirk, they'll kill all of us if they can get to us. And like, you could probably do a statistical analysis of who's the next target, the Deadpool sort of thing, by who's. You'd have to be a public speaker though. And for stuff like this, it's like, what would have prevented this, or Trump would have simply been plexiglass, would have stopped a 220, bulletproof plexiglass would have stopped a 5.56 easily. And so, like, that's going to be, if you're going to continue to have public speeches, you have to have that kind of security and metal detectors. And it's just not the America, as you might think of it. People think in terms of generations. And whatever you think of America, Norman Rockwell period or something, is obviously, it's that America is dead. This is something else. So the left are a collection of sociopaths, and they're happy to kill everyone to save them. The left-wing mind needs to be studied. Their willingness to believe theory written by people with no experience over the empirical real-life events that we see daily, like with the train incident. We're not really surprised over that, because let me say, we know the lay of the land, because we see the repetition of that behavior all the time. But the left wing worships academia, the ivory towers of theory, based usually on alcoholic dreams of these philosophers. They want to deflect to the safety of esoteric nomenclature, sort of an appeal to authority. The left has a politically correct framework that shapes their narrative. It's one of the reasons they can't define man or woman, because some words are these command line terms for the root user. Before it was an issue, they knew that men are adult human males, males carry the seed, and females bear the young. That's just the broad definition, but it's mostly correct. This is what the thing is. The word refers to a concept or thing, but 10 years ago it became political for the left, so they changed their worldview to accommodate a fiction. And almost none of them can simply break away from the crowd and admit that the whole pronoun stuff is nonsense, which it very much is. So they get backed into a corner, or they can't just say to the other left-wingers, I've looked into this, I've had the argument, we're going to have to agree to disagree. I think gender is derived from sex, so sex is a binary, at least in 99% of the cases. Actually, I think it's 100%, because it's XXXY. So it's the second placement, I think, is the determinative. So it would be a binary. And you go, okay, we're just going to have to disagree. Agree to disagree. And, reasonable people can disagree without becoming disagreeable. And the left wing would look at you, and it would be the needle scratch on the record, because they can't. They will just keep. They did this to Donald DeLay in Comicsgate. This was like 10 years ago, where he kept asking questions about, what did Ethan do that was so bad? What did Richard Myers do that was so bad? And they gave him really vague answers. And it was at the point of like them saying, well, he got in a fight. He was arguing with Mags Visaggio and some other, those kind of BLT type of people. And that was it. And then, like, the unspoken law for them is there's a hierarchy where you can't argue with someone who's somewhere on the BLT, queer, trans, one of those type of things, because that gives them some sort of, a position above you on the hierarchy. But DeLay kept asking them for hard facts and details, and they couldn't answer him. So finally, they just started passively aggressively threatening him, like, it's a nice career you have there. It'd be a shame if you kept engaging in wrongthink. And then I guess finally he left and got into Comicsgate, and I think he did the Cecil's cash grab book. So they get backed into a corner when they refuse to define women, because they're scared of being canceled. The left has these mental issues, but the moderate left won't disavow the violent left that threatens Richard Myers back in the day, his wife and children, if you remember the Comicsgate days. And what was that guy's name? I forget this guy. He was truly like Hollywood crazy. I don't know what happened to him. He wrote a book. It was on Amazon. It was the most depressing comic I've ever read. But he was mentioning Myers, this guy who runs Diversity in Comics. He's just an average, moderate type of person who's got, like a bunch of kids, wives and ex-wives and this kind of stuff like everyone else. And, when you argue with someone, you argue with the person. It's like every civilized human knows that you'd never discuss somebody's family. But these people are mentally ill. Like, they don't know that. And that's not really the issue. The issue is that nobody in the comics industry like Gail Simone should have spoken up, or Mark Waid should have spoken up and go, whoa, 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 this is, whoa, leave, go after him all you want, but you got to leave his family out of it. This is unacceptable. Nobody did that. They probably pretended not to notice. Anyway, so they openly celebrate a very moderate family guy with a beautiful family being assassinated because he doesn't believe that men or women, or I'm not even sure exactly what they were mad about, but like he's not marching around with rifles and forming militias. He's just talking to people in a very moderate, if such a thing exists, the most milquetoast political takes, where he's closer to the globalists because his ideas won't work any more than the left-wing communist kids' ideas won't work. They both won't work. And if I had to say it, like, I think he's closer to them than we are to him. And, one of the reasons the right wing loses is because they turn on anyone who's a millimeter farther to the right and disavow them. And you look at them, you go, okay, so you just lost like 10%, 20% of your base. And the left wing doesn't do that. They don't disavow anyone. So that's why the left wing keeps moving the window to the left and the right wing just keeps losing, where it's a position of the right wing today is, the left wing of a decade ago or 20 years ago, or like those, Hillary Clinton quotes and who was that last president's quotes about, racial jungles and super predators and these kind of quotes from like the 90s. And if you look at that and you go, oh, Hillary Clinton was openly farther. Imagine somebody on the right wing politics today calling, that protected class super predators. And she just said something about like dragging a 20 through a trailer park. And now they'd be like, that's classists and that's misogynist and that's all this kind of marginalized and disenfranchised. It's a whole different world now. But like, she was more politically incorrect and further right than anyone is today. And that's not a good sign at all. So the thing is, they're not just going to let us live in peace. They want total control over your kids' education, over the words you speak. And at some point, you have to accept that they're crazy and dangerous. And you're not going to fix this through conventional political solutions. I'm not advocating any unconstitutional activities. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys all next. Ooh, that is a long video.